I never imagined that what was supposed to be the most beautiful trip of our lives would become one of my worst memories. But deep down, maybe I had seen the signs long before. It all started about 6 months before the trip. I remember the exact moment I decided to surprise him. It was a random evening. He was sitting on the couch, glued to his phone as always, and I was next to him on my laptop, scrolling through pictures of tropical beaches. We had been going through a rough patch. Stress from work, bills piling up, barely any conversations that weren't about chores or schedules. And I thought, maybe this trip could fix us. Maybe it could bring us back to who we used to be. So I started saving. Every coffee I didn't buy, every night out with friends I said no to. Every extra shift I worked was for this. He had no idea. When he glanced at my screen and asked what I was doing, I'd just say, "Nothing important, just looking at stuff." But the truth was, I was planning something special. Late at night, after he fell asleep, I'd stay up comparing hotel reviews, looking for flights, calculating budgets. I wanted everything to be perfect. The day I finally booked the resort, I felt like I could breathe again. 7 nights in a beautiful beachfront hotel. Ocean views, buffet breakfasts, candlelit dinners. All the things I imagined would make him smile. When I told him, his reaction confused me. He gave me a small, almost forced smile. Not the kind of smile I had been hoping for. But I convinced myself he was just tired. The days leading up to the trip, I was bursting with excitement. I packed carefully, made a list of restaurants I wanted to try, planned little surprises for each day. Finally, the day of departure arrived. On the way to the airport, he was unusually quiet. I thought, maybe he was nervous about flying. Maybe he was thinking about work. When we arrived at the resort, it was just like in the pictures. White sand, tall palm trees, crystal clear water, and that endless blue sky. Our first day went by quickly. We unpacked, took a walk on the beach, had dinner at the hotel's main restaurant. I took pictures, made short videos for my social media, laughed, tried to make him laugh too. But he was distant. Always on his phone, smiling at messages, giving short answers when I asked him things. Whenever I asked who he was texting, he'd say, "Just work stuff, nothing important." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that this trip would bring us back together. That the man sitting across from me was still the same person I fell in love with. But deep inside, something felt wrong. There was a crack, small, almost invisible, but definitely there. And as much as I tried to ignore it, that crack was about to become a complete break. This was just the beginning. The second day of our vacation started like any other. The sun poured through the thin curtains of our hotel room, and the sound of distant waves mixed with the faint noise of guests walking through the hallways. I turned over in bed, hoping to find him still asleep, maybe reaching for me like he used to. But no. He was already awake, sitting at the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone. "Just checking emails," he said when he noticed me watching. I forced a smile and nodded, pretending that didn't sting. We went down to breakfast. The resort's dining area was beautiful, open windows letting in the morning light, the smell of coffee and fresh bread floating through the air, and soft music playing in the background. And that's when I saw her for the first time. The waitress. She couldn't have been older than 25, with dark hair tied up neatly, soft skin, and that kind of smile that feels too practiced, too perfect. As she moved between tables, I watched her laugh at other guests' jokes, refill coffees, always smiling. But when she reached our table, something felt different. Her gaze landed, not on both of us, not on me, but only on him. "Good morning. What can I bring you today?" she asked, her voice sweet and low, almost like a whisper meant just for him. And he smiled back. That genuine, relaxed smile, the kind I hadn't seen on his face in weeks. My stomach tightened. I told myself I was imagining things. That she was just being friendly. That I was being dramatic. But that feeling in my chest wouldn't go away. Every time we came down for a meal, she was there. Always her. Always with that smile. Always finding reasons to come back to our table, to refill his glass, to ask if everything was okay. And he started creating reasons to talk to her. "Can I get a little more ice? What dessert do you recommend here? Do you have a local drink you'd suggest?" Little, stupid questions. But always directed at her. Never at the other waiters. I'd sit across from him, forcing small talk, trying to joke, but getting nothing in return except short, distracted answers. His eyes, always drifting back to her whenever she passed by. One afternoon, while he stepped outside to take a call, I stayed behind at our table. From the corner of my eye, I saw her talking to another server. They laughed, whispered something, then both glanced toward where my husband had been sitting. I felt my cheeks burn. Was I imagining things? Was I being paranoid? That night, I sat on our balcony, staring at the ocean while he showered. I wondered if I should say something, if I should ask him directly. But what would I even say? That I was jealous of a few smiles? Of casual small talk? I grabbed my phone and opened a chat with my best friend. Typed, deleted, typed again. I couldn't bring myself to send anything. I didn't want to sound like a jealous, insecure wife. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I told myself, one more day. Just watch, maybe I'm overthinking. But I wasn't. And what happened next would break me in ways I never thought possible. That night, something inside me felt heavier than usual. There was a strange tension in the air, like I was waiting for something to happen, but didn't know what. I decided to wear my favorite dress. The red one, the one he used to love. I curled my hair, added a touch of lipstick. I wanted to feel beautiful, wanted to feel seen, wanted to remind him of us. We walked down to the resort restaurant around 8. The lights were soft, the air smelled of grilled fish and tropical flowers, the gentle sound of a piano playing somewhere in the background. We sat at our usual table, the one near the window overlooking the pool. I hoped, desperately, that tonight would be different. That he would look at me, talk to me, that maybe the distance between us would shrink, even if just a little. But no. He was distracted, eyes darting around the room, constantly checking his phone, smiling at messages I wasn't allowed to see. I tried starting conversations. Asked him about our plans for the next day. Suggested going for a walk after dinner. But all I got were short, cold replies. And then, she appeared. The waitress. Her smile, as bright as always, her voice soft as she approached our table. "Good evening. What would you like to drink tonight?" She looked only at him. I clenched my fists under the table. He smiled back, that easy, warm smile I hadn't seen directed at me in so long. I kept my eyes on the menu, pretending to choose a wine, trying to swallow the lump growing in my throat. I ordered the same wine as the night before, just to avoid any conversation. When she brought our drinks back, he leaned slightly toward her, as if to reach for something on the floor, or maybe adjusting his chair. It seemed like nothing. Until I heard it. His voice. Low, but clear enough for me to hear. A whisper, directed only at her, as she passed behind him carrying a tray. You're the only one who makes me happy. The world stopped. I froze. My heart slammed against my chest. My stomach twisted. My hands trembled in my lap. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. I stared at my plate, at the untouched food in front of me. The sounds of laughter from nearby tables, the clinking of glasses, it all felt distant, muted, like I was underwater. My ears rang. My vision blurred. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to get up and run. But I stayed. Frozen in place. Inside, I was breaking. But outside, I sat there, smiling weakly, nodding whenever he spoke to me, pretending everything was fine. I pushed food around my plate, took small sips of wine, all while replaying those words in my head. Over and over. You're the only one who makes me happy. I wondered if anyone else had heard. Looked around. But everyone was caught up in their own conversations, their own lives. Just me, trapped in mine. Every fake smile that night, every bite of food I forced down, was like swallowing glass. When he asked me if I wanted dessert, I shook my head. I couldn't taste anything anyway. I made it through that dinner. Through that unbearable silence between us. Through that betrayal, that he didn't even realize I had witnessed. But sitting there, with tears burning behind my eyes, I made a decision. That this would be our last dinner together. And he didn't even know it yet. When we got back to our room, everything looked the same as every other night. The same hallway, the same soft lighting, the same faint scent of jasmine coming from the balcony. But inside me, everything had changed. As soon as the door closed, he kicked off his shoes and flopped onto the bed, grabbing his phone like always. I stood there, frozen, staring at him, as if I was looking at a stranger. Every laugh he gave while scrolling, every smile at the screen. It all felt like a punch to my chest. I walked straight to the bathroom, closed the door, and finally let go. Tears poured down my face, uncontrollable, relentless. My hands shook, my heart raced. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Looking at myself in the mirror. Mascara running, cheeks blotchy, eyes red. I barely recognized the person staring back at me. How had I allowed things to get to this point? I had planned this vacation with love, with hope. Trying to save something that, deep down, I knew was already broken. I sat on the bathroom floor, hugging my knees to my chest. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to ask the question I'd been avoiding. Is this really the life I want? And the answer came loud and clear. No. I wiped my tears, stood up, took a deep breath, and made the hardest decision of my life. Without making a sound, I opened the closet, pulled out my suitcase, and began to pack. One by one, I folded my clothes. Each item felt like closing a chapter. The dress I wore on our first night, the sandals from our beach walk, even the book I hadn't finished reading. All of it, going into that suitcase. Meanwhile, he stayed on the bed, laughing at something on his phone, oblivious. He didn't even notice the zipper of my suitcase, didn't notice me moving around the room. Didn't notice that I was leaving. I opened my laptop, my hand still trembling. Searched for flights. Any flight, the first one available. That same night, when the booking confirmation appeared on my screen, a strange calm washed over me. A painful, bittersweet calm. I sat at the edge of the bed for a moment, looking at him. Still laughing, still smiling, still completely unaware. I grabbed my jacket, slipped on my shoes, and pulled my suitcase to the door. Only then, as I picked up my purse, did he finally glance up. "Where are you going?" he asked, voice flat, uninterested. As if I was just stepping out for ice. I stared at him. The man I had loved, fought for, cried over. And now? I couldn't even find the words. I swallowed hard. And without answering, I opened the door and walked out. The hallway was quiet. The sound of my suitcase wheels on the floor echoed with every step. In the elevator, I looked at my reflection in the mirrored walls. Eyes swollen, face pale, but expression determined. By the time I reached the lobby, my phone started vibrating. His name flashing on the screen. First a text, then another, then a call, then more calls. I ignored them all. Walking out into the night air, I flagged down the first taxi I saw. Told the driver, "Airport, as fast as you can." As we drove off, I stared out the window, watching the hotel disappear behind me. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, I felt free. As the taxi sped toward the airport, I sat in the back seat, staring out the window, letting the city lights blur through my tears. Every mile we moved away from the hotel felt like breathing again. The driver didn't ask questions, just nodded when I gave him my destination. I sat there, gripping my phone tightly, watching as more messages came in. His name, flashing again and again. "Where are you? Why did you take your suitcase? Answer me. What the hell is going on?" I turned the phone face down on my lap. I couldn't look at it anymore. When we reached the airport, I stepped out, pulling my suitcase behind me like it weighed 100 pounds. But in reality, for the first time, I felt lighter. I went straight to the check-in counter. The woman behind the desk smiled politely, asking for my ID and booking number. Her voice sounded distant, like I was underwater. When she handed me my boarding pass, I exhaled for what felt like the first time all night. I found a seat near my gate and collapsed into the chair. Around me, families laughed, couples kissed, friends took selfies. And there I was, sitting alone, with swollen eyes and a broken heart. My phone buzzed again. And again. 20 missed calls. Dozens of texts. I scrolled through them without opening any. Part of me wanted to call him back. To scream at him. To ask him why. But the other part, the part that had been ignored and pushed aside for so long, knew better. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. "You're the only one who makes me happy." That sentence, that betrayal, played on repeat in my mind. Like a broken record, scratching over and over. I opened my music app, put on some low instrumental music, just to drown out my own thoughts. I sat there, watching people walk by. Imagining where they were going, and who they were going to meet. And for the first time, I started imagining a future without him. When they announced boarding for my flight, I stood up, pulled my suitcase, and walked toward the gate. My heart raced, not with fear, but with something new, something close to relief. Walking down the jet bridge, I felt the weight of my decision settle on my shoulders, but it didn't crush me. It lifted me. I found my seat by the window. Bucked my seatbelt. And as the engines roared to life, I finally turned my phone off completely. As the plane began to taxi, I looked out at the runway, the lights, the darkness beyond. And when the wheels lifted off the ground, a single tear rolled down my cheek. But this time, it wasn't just sadness. It was closure. The city shrank beneath me, fading into a web of tiny lights. I thought about all the things I had tolerated, all the nights I cried myself to sleep, all the moments I felt invisible. And now, for the first time, I had chosen myself. I didn't know what would happen next. Where I would go from here. How I would explain everything to my family and friends. But one thing was clear. I was done with betrayal, with silence, with pain. Somewhere over the clouds. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself. This is the beginning, not the end. If you've ever been through something like this, you know exactly how I felt. Thank you for listening to my story. If you want to hear more real-life stories like this, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share your experience in the comments. See you in the next video.